So welcome. I'm Monica Falbo. I'm the Wellness Administrator for HR. So I'm here half the week and I'm doing acupuncture half the week downtown, mostly for women with anxiety disorders who want to learn how to feel good again. So self-care is dear to my heart. And seeing him out of the shot. Self-care is an important component of work-life balance. For me, you're actually perfect where you are. You're welcome to be there. So self-care is, I think, an important component of just learning how you want to live so that everyday stress, which happens to all of us, sometimes catastrophic, sometimes just edging away at you little by little, can be more manageable, and so that you know what you're working towards so that you can decide how you're going to approach stress when it occurs. So there are some of us, there are actually 25 of us on the internet, which I'm excited about. So if you're on the internet, normally I just say to type your name into the little YouTube chat box. But if you're on the internet, I cannot handle 25 of you in the chat box. So please just email me if you're on the internet so that I know that you're here at mefsandfrank55@drexel.edu. I am, unfortunately, going to be periodically looking at this computer because there are all these wonderful people who I want to attend to and care for. So if you're in the room and I'm looking at this, that's what's happening. If I'm over here at this other computer, so many technologies, then I'm just pushing the slides forward. So just know that for better or for worse, I will be between these devices and I'll be trying to make it not crazy because I have a slide about multitasking and why you should not do that, but this is the reality of what's happening today. So welcome to the people online. Welcome to the people in the room. If the people online have a question, feel free to type it in. If you're here and you have a question, you can stop me at any time. I'm only tied to being helpful to you. I don't actually care if we get through all this material. We'll just do whatever is meaningful for all of us as best as I can. So I'd love to hear from a couple people online, and you can type or in person about why you signed up for this. I am excited that you're here, and I'd like to know what drew you to this so I can decide how to be helpful. Does anyone have anything that comes to mind?
I've attended your sessions in the past, and you're always so helpful.
Oh, thank you.
You set me on the right path, especially now that we're getting ready to start a new term.
Great.
Not that this term is not busy, it still is.
Yes.
But it's going to gear up very quickly. So you're always a motivation, you have great resources, so I'm here just to have you inspire me again.
Oh, thank you, Maura. So the audience is saying that there's a new term beginning, things are happening, there's still things that have to be attended to from the current term, but we're starting to gear up, so how to balance that and how to move through that, and I hope I can inspire. I'll do what I can. Okay, so nothing from the internet, people, so we'll just go ahead and launch in. So the first thing we're going to actually do is take a time out. So I like to start all presentations and meetings this way because we often come from being very busy, maybe we're just working, maybe we're feeling stressed or we're eating or we rushed to get here, we took a shuttle. So we're going to start by just taking a couple minutes to settle in the room and to take a couple breaths together. So you can start by just noticing how you feel. So if it feels safe to you, you can close your eyes or you can just gaze down at the table and we'll just check in and see what's feeling true for you today. So you can gently come back to the room. Did anyone have anything that they learned from that time? Some of you are still in it. You're like, yes, leave me here. I don't want to come back. Did anyone learn anything from checking in? Was it what you expected, or did you learn like, oh, I'm actually feeling anxious or more relaxed than I thought? Was anything different than what you expected?
I think I just got to notice how tense I was sitting. And
Yeah.
so it forced me to like kind of relax a bit.
Great,
Yeah.
great. So sometimes we don't realize, as the audience is saying, that we're tense or we're stressed, and then we stop and check in and we're like, wait, what is happening? It's actually okay. I'm just sitting here. Like, this is not, I hope, a stressful situation right now at this moment. So that was the first little lesson. If anyone online has anything else to say, I know there's a delay, but I'll try to attend to you. So we can just stop and check in periodically from time to time. So that's like self-care tip number 1, is that we have to get information about what's happening right now before we can make a decision. So sometimes we learn that we're fine when we do that. Sometimes we learn like, oh, I'm actually feeling tense. And in that case, what you can do is actually adjust your breathing. So when you're breathing slowly and more deeply, it activates the vagus nerve and it puts us into more of a parasympathetic rest and digest state. So often when we're breathing and we're anxious, we'll pant or breathe very shallowly. And breathing more shallowly on the out breath will activate your sympathetic nervous system. So if you're scared, you need to run, you're going to do that. If you're wanting to relax, you can focus on the inhale, making it a little bit longer so that you can start to shift your experience into something different. So that can go kind of 2 ways. So sometimes it's nice to just be like, I'm sitting here, I'm tense, let me just notice and pay attention to that and see how that feels. And sometimes we can decide that we want to make a different decision and shift into a different way of being, and we can do that by activating the breath, which drives all the energy through the body. And so a couple people online said they want to prioritize their health and well-being. And yes, it's hard to take care of oneself with such a packed schedule. So Drexel has a reputation of being a very busy place. I'm guessing that might be true for you. So the way we can start to change that culture is by putting in like teeny tiny little stepping stones of self-care within our department so that we can actually do something different and feel empowered. Change it from the inside out. Okay, so what do you currently do? Does anyone have any self-care practices, online or in person, that they currently do that help them kind of navigate through all the busyness, either at home or at work?
I like to try to take a walk at lunch, even if it's just for 15 minutes, getting out of
Great.
the office, clear my head, have some alone time.
That's awesome. So taking a walk at lunch, even if it's 15 minutes. I recently discovered the wooden Adirondack chairs behind, they're like at 33rd
And sure.
and Cherry. There are wooden Adirondack chairs and they're magical. And they're in the shade. So you can go on back there, find them. There's also that sweet little garden that you can kind of cut through if you want like a little nature break. So there's a handout in the back and a sign-in sheet for you. So yeah, find little magical moments on campus. So great. So taking a walk. So some people online are saying that they walk and they do yoga, which are great practices. Also some meditation for 10 minutes in the morning and swimming over lunch. Wow. Ooh, that sounds so, there could be a little swim club if you all band together. And then walking during work. So that's great. So gets you going, gets you to a change of scenery, maybe you get outside. It can just enliven you. So another person saying they use the Calm app to assist in meditation each morning, which I haven't used myself, but have known many people that use. So there are also a number of apps, Calm and Headspace. We've got a lot of self-care going on the internet. Pound Pilates in 3 Parkway, 30-minute workout. And someone loves to lie down on a small mat. I'm guessing in their office, which I love. Lie down if you have a door. Anyone else have anything they want to share?
I'll leave my house 15 minutes early so I can get on campus and read
Okay,
outside of my office.
great. So leaving just 15 minutes earlier, getting here a little earlier, and reading. I know I've offered this presentation in the past. I've also had people say just leaving 10 minutes earlier so they don't get here like panting and panicked and almost late. Like that doesn't feel good. So being here early and having a little me time within the context of the Drexel space so that you can kind of, I'm guessing that gives you some ownership of your day. Like, I got here early. I'm gonna read now. That's great. Okay. I love it. So the basic intention behind this slide is for us to gather some wisdom from each other. So there are all sorts of tiny things that we can do, and we can start to cultivate like a little bucket list so that if we're feeling anxious, we can have some strategies that we can use. So self-care, if you have something in place, will be a foundation for you. It's ideal to have it in place before you're super stressed because when you're super stressed, that's the hardest time to start something new. So if you can start having these little practices that you do now, hopefully before you're feeling really overwhelmed, it's going to give you a little foundation to work from. Okay. So how often are we feeling stressed? And does that feel like a problem? Some of us are laughing like, that's hilarious. Like, I'm stressed all the time.
I think there's different levels of stress.
Okay, great. So,
Demands, some that are work-related,
Yep.
that are project-related,
Yep.
time-bound.
Yep.
And then there are others just sometimes personally, maybe that are lingering. So I think distressing throughout the day, every single day, you can take an inventory if you wanted.
Yep.
Or just set an intention, like you said,
Yeah.
at the beginning of the day to make sure you have self-care as a ritual or a routine. And maybe recognize, I try to recognize, like, I'm breathing, as you said, that's an indicator for me when
Yeah.
I start to get stressed, really shallow. Breathing, or holding my breath,
Yeah.
tensing up,
Yeah.
shoulders all the way up.
Yep.
So being aware of that, and sometimes Melanie and I work in the same office, I need to walk outside, just to break up, and get fresh air, different thought, and breathing deeply, as you said.
Great.
To do a world of difference.
Good. So just to summarize for the people online, so different levels of stress. So some are time-bound, or project-oriented, or, they're going to end. And those can be, if those are happening constantly, like if there's always a problem, that's really challenging for me because you're like, okay, I got out of this one and now another one is coming like right after it. So that can create this kind of more lingering stress that we referred to, where it's like chronic underlying stress. And that can really ebb away at me personally because it's like this erosion. It's like, oh, this thing in the background. So kind of different categories of stress, and then making sure that you're aware of what's going on for you and what feels true for you so that you can decide how to react to that and how to work with that. So that's really important. Okay, so we already covered a few of these, but I just wanted to talk about a couple little things that we could do. So stress, stress is going to happen for all of us. If it always happens, that can really be a problem. Like if it's running in the background constantly for you, it would probably be ideal if you could find ways to start to mitigate that, because over time it will impact your health, it will wear down your immune system, your cardiovascular system, and it just leaves all of us feeling I personally feel frayed when I have chronic stress. So that's why the self-care comes in. And we're going to talk about positive motivation, deciding how you want to live so you can move towards that life. And if that life includes some chronic stress at work or at home, deciding that that's worth it to you to continue being in that environment. Yeah, it's scary to make choices like that. Like, I'm going to be stressed because I decided this outcome. But then you have more power, more ownership, and just kind of less sense of helplessness, at least for me. So again, we don't have control over external circumstances, but we can decide how we respond. So we already talked about a few of these strategies in the last slide, but breathing practices. So these are things that can take like 30 seconds to do. So you're at your desk and you're like, you're emailing or doing whatever. And then you stop for 30 seconds and you don't even have to close your eyes. You can just say like, wait, let me check and see how I'm feeling throughout my body. Oh, my shoulders are like this. Let me decide to open to this situation, take 3 deep breaths and return. So these are little things. So that you can even, some people have like a set time of day where they do this. Like maybe there's a meeting that you're really not into. So right before, right after that weekly meeting, you're like, I'm going to check in on how I'm doing. We also talked a lot of you like to walk around, swim, walk, so just changing positions. Just even, sometimes I go to the bathroom on a different floor. I've been to all the bathrooms in 3201. So just being like, okay, let me go down the stairwell and like see, you know, this is like a totally different experience. Just like getting yourself out of the environment, even if you don't leave the building, can be helpful. So another thing I like to do, because I walk 2 miles to work and I walk 2 miles home, so I am like a pretty fast walker, so I can like start racing myself. So when I'm feeling stressed or panicked, I like to take a lap around my office, but I like to slow my walk down. Like, okay, I'm gonna move around, but I'm not gonna run or panic like a trapped animal. I'm gonna take a deliberate walk around my little, I don't want to say cage, my cubicle farm. So also stretching. So if you just have a couple simple stretches, if you have a standing desk, it's not good to stand all day. It's also not good to sit all day. Your body wants variety. So just standing up or sitting down or just getting a little bit of stretching in. Asking for support if you are at work and you're in a situation where it's just not feeling viable. If you have a colleague you can go to or a supervisor and say, I need to run this by you. I need help editing this. I feel stuck. Is there something you could do to support me? That's actually completely acceptable, and it helps us build a supportive work environment for each other. And then we touched on this earlier, but having just like one thing you do. So you can't do everything, or I can't. So if you figure out, actually I'm not sure I want to do everything, but if I did like everything I wanted to do in the morning for my self-care, I would never get to work. Like it would be like 4 hours of like the most delicious, fabulous things. So you have to kind of prioritize, and we're going to do that through the exercise. What is important to you? So I meditate every morning for 15 minutes. I meditate every night for 15 minutes. And then I go to yoga like 3 or 4 times a week. I walk to work because that's important to me. And if I'm really panicked at work, I change positions. I go outside. So that for me is what I have decided to commit to. That could sound like a lot. You don't have to do that much. But if you have like one 5 or 10 minute thing you do every day, make that your thing. The consistency is more important than the length of time. So even if it's like a 5-minute walk at lunch, or if you can't do lunch once a day, that can be your thing that you can go to as a touchstone. Okay, so I'm assuming the internet is good because they're not asking me anything right now. So if the people in the cybersphere want to speak, they can type. So we're going to turn to the handout now. If you are on the internet and you don't have a handout, you don't have to panic because it's 3 empty boxes, which you can create on a blank piece of paper for yourself, and it will be just as lovely and not a big deal. So our first box, we are going to talk about positive motivation. So for me, this is the key to self-care because we all have things we don't like at work or at home. Like my partner doesn't like cooking, but he likes eating. So, you know, like at some point you have to decide that you care more about nourishing yourself, that it outweighs the pain of cooking. So for him, sometimes if I'm not cooking, sometimes that means he's making like eggs and vegetables. That's fine. But you have to kind of know what you actually care more about so that you can decide what's valuable to you and what you want to move towards. So in this example, instead of saying like, I want to move away from the stress of cooking, which isn't totally realistic if you're going to eat like actual food. He recently did try this thing that I felt very creeped out by, which maybe you've tried and maybe works for you, called Soylent. And I was like, I don't want to try that. And it's like a everything shake made by, and then we watched a video, it's like, this is made by the startup bros. Like, do you really want to drink that for every meal? And it's like $70 a week, but it's basically like a liquid shake. And you drink it 3 meals a day and you're supposedly fine. And then we watched the video, he was like, I don't think I want to do that. I was like, great, because that is worrisome. So at some point you have to decide that the desire to be healthy is more important to you than the pain of cooking. So he doesn't want to cook, but he ultimately wants to be healthy enough to cook food that's at a level that will nourish him. So that is my example that I didn't know I was going to give until right now. So I hope it wasn't super awkward, of positive motivation. So we all have stress at work, and we tend to frame things negatively, like, I want to be less stressed. Well, why do you want to be less stressed? Do you want to feel more peaceful? Do you want to feel like you're in control? Do you want to feel like you have agency? Do you want to be less stressed because you want to have a sense of enjoyment or contribution? So deciding what's actually important to you and then moving towards that. So in box 1, we're going to think about why we came to this workshop, and so what we want to get out of it. So think about how we can frame that positively. So instead of being less stressed, you would say, I want to feel more calm at work, or I want to feel more empowered, or whatever it is for you. So we're going to take a few minutes in box 1 and just reflect on why we want to do any self-care. What is our actual motivation? What do we want to get out of that process? Okay. So I just want to re-stress. We'll look again at our positive motivation. So if you say like, I want to feel more calm, why do you care about being calm? Why is that important to you? Some people don't care about that at all. So just digging as deep as you can internally and knowing like why you care about a particular quality. So one of mine that I really care about at work is flexibility. And enough autonomy that I can do things like this talk and really work one-on-one with people. Those are important qualities to me because I value these relationships that I get, and I value kind of personalizing and individualizing health and wellness. So for me, having flexibility and autonomy are some of the key features of my work, more than money. Like I'd love to have more money, but if I had to trade the flexibility and autonomy for money, it wouldn't work for me for very long. So does anyone have a positive motivation they'd be willing to share, either from the internet, you can start typing to me if you're willing to share, or from the room? Does anyone have an example that they feel comfortable?
I'll share mine.
Great.
I have a positive motivation of mine is I would like to live more in the moment and less in my head so that I'm actually
Great.
connecting with people.
Okay, beautiful. So living more in the moment and less in your head. And the reason behind that is you want to connect with people.
Right.
That's great. So you know exactly why you're doing that, what your actual motivation behind the motivation is. That's beautiful. Good.
When I'm stressed, I often feel foggy
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
distracted.
Yep.
And so my positive motivation is to be more engaged and curious
Great.
because I value my intellectual capacity. It's part of my job. So if
Yeah.
I'm stressed, it's really kind of eaten into that.
Yeah, great. So being more engaged and curious so that you
innovative.
can combat the stress, the fogginess of the stress, and also so you can like do your job in the way you feel most represents who you are and how well you can do the job. Because the fogginess kind of takes away from the creativity and the openness and the qualities that you value that make you want to do the job in the first place. Great, that's awesome. I see smiles. You can share if you'd like, but you don't have to.
No, I want to.
Okay, great.
I said I want to be more useful to others. I want to be more present and useful to others. Because I love that you said the word what you value, and I value that also in the work that I do,
Great.
helping and assisting students.
Great, great. So you just want to be present and available to others so that you can really assist the students that you're working with and really be a resource for them. That's great. So when we're doing something at work that maybe isn't like as exciting or inspiring, keeping our positive motivation and our awareness can help us be like, okay, I'm doing this thing I'm not really down with, maybe, that I don't love, but it's trying to get me towards this position where I can be of service to these other people. I can be connected, I can be creative and available and open. I can really be helping the people I care about. Great, that's wonderful. Let's see. Okay, so the internet, someone is saying that they want to be able to make clear and concise decisions. That is like super hard to do sometimes. So I'm going to ask the couple people who are posing this, as I'm going to ask them like, why is it important to you to make those decisions? What will you gain from making clear and concise decisions? Great, you can type that in if you'd like to. Yeah. Great. Okay. Does anyone else want to share? Did anyone struggle with that or get stuck trying to identify what was valuable to them? Okay. So we're going to move on a little. So the next slide is actually just a little I've given this presentation 4 times, so I've kind of pulled it into one, hopefully beautiful whole. But this is from Deep Work, which is a book by Cal Newport, who is actually a computer engineer. But he talks about how you can actually structure your work so that you're working, and he is an academic, so he has the luxury of like not maintaining a schedule according to other people's hours, which I'm guessing most of us maintain a schedule according to other people's requirements. But he talks about how he can actually write books, do creative work, do the things that kind of are more intentional, which I think you were referring to with wanting to like focus in on something. And that sense of being able to really zoom in and have some uninterrupted time can just be really powerful and can connect us to why we do our jobs to begin with. So I'm going to give you a couple tips from him. And I think when we're talking about stress, leaving you feeling like foggy, sometimes there's just so many things demanding our attention that it's hard to really have that sense of like connection to our work and of zooming in and focusing, which I think is how humans work best. So one of his tips is, when you're able to, closing your email while actually completing a project. So one thing that happens is called attention drag by psychologists. So you're doing your work, and then you get an email and you're like, ooh, an email. And you pop over and you look at the email, and then you go back to your work. So it takes your brain, like, I don't really remember, but it's like 20 to 45 seconds to completely return to the thing that you're doing. So you think like, oh, I just checked my email and now I'm doing this, but you're actually, if you're doing those kinds of unintegrated tasks together, there's an attention drag. Like, your mind is not going to come all the way back immediately, and it will actually kind of disperse you. And it means that you're not able to really give your full attention to this important thing that I'm guessing might be a little more important than email. Emails are great. We all communicate, but most of us are not professional emailers. We're professional something else's. And the emailing is like a tool that we use to do our job. That because I think many of us get so many emails, we think our job is checking our email, but our job is to do the work, not really to check the email. So there's research that if you're doing, like, if 2 people are riding in a car together and one is driving and you're both talking, so the person is technically multitasking, they're driving and talking, but there's evidence that when traffic is heavy, the person in the passenger seat will kind of like stop. They'll pause if the person's like merging onto 76. It's actually more integrated than, you being like working and then, oh, I gotta check my email, gotta check my whatever. That actually kind of eats away at your attention and can just leave you feeling like you never get to do the job that's important to you. So if you can, close your email. No, it's great.
Just curious if this has ever happened. So I was texting one of my friends, the first text me sending to my friend.
Yep.
And I got a bounce back that said, and you can turn this on, I think it's programmed on the iPhone.
Uh-huh.
So when you slide it over to Do Not Disturb, I guess there's like an automated feature.
Okay.
The language is, and I guess this person was driving, I'm driving right now.
Oh,
I
yeah.
turned on my Do Not Disturb function.
Cool.
I will not, I will not see this until I'm to the place where I need to be.
Okay,
If it's
great.
urgent, please retext the word urgent and
Okay.
it's come through. But
Okay.
I was like, this is the first time I'd seen that.
Yeah.
So, but you do this? Yeah.
That's awesome. So we're learning.
When I'm on the bus, it thinks I'm driving, but
The bus is totally valid. So we're learning from the audience that there's actually a thing on your iPhone. There's a Do Not Disturb mode, which I'm guessing is in settings. And if someone texts you, it will text that person back and say, I'm driving right now. I will not see this text unless you say urgent, and then I will deal with your text. So there are actually ways to kind of take our technology into a mode where we're not interrupted. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's in settings somewhere.
Sure. I can
Yeah.
tell everyone in
Okay. No worries. You don't even need to. I'm sure we can all Google it.
Get that message
Okay.
out.
Great. I'm going to come back to the online pupil in a second. We'll just work through this little list. So there's actually research that 20 minutes of emailing time is like optimal, and after that your brain is not as effective when you're just like plowing through the email. So I know 20 minutes sounds like nothing to those of us who get like, I don't want to say a horrifying number of emails per day, but if you can try to do basically what is called time chunking. So if you can do this, and this is so hard because we have colleagues, we have emails, we have many things we have to do, but if you can say like, I'm going to take an hour to work on this really important project. If you have a door that closes, it's a great opportunity to close your door. You can have a note similar to the little text bounce back thing that says, I am working on a project. Please do not interrupt me unless this is urgent. We can create a culture where people can start to actually have time to do the work that is needed. So if we all agree to these boundaries, we can start to change the Drexel culture. So if you can start setting aside time for projects, and that's also important to have flex time, right? Like if you're in, we had the days where you're in meetings for like 6 hours, you're not doing anything else. Like that is it. Your job that day is to go to meetings. So if you can start having some flex time where you just do whatever you feel you need to do, but if you can have like little set periods where you actually do something that's important, that can help you to start to take care of your actual work and yourself. You can also block time for lunch, radical as that is. So we talked about attention residue and switching between tasks. Okay, so we're gonna actually move on, but I'm first gonna be with the online people. So the people that said they wanted to make clear and concise decisions, the intention behind that is having emotional intelligence in order to gauge how they interact with the people around me. So clear decision making could help this person in the workplace as they grow into their position, and others are supporting that. So I'm assuming without them being here to interact with me and make sure I'm interpreting this correctly. So making a clear and concise decision will also help to support the entire workplace. And so if we can be clear and concise in telling our colleagues, I need an hour to work on this, are you going to be okay if I go and do this for an hour? That can help all of us start to have a workplace where we can take care of what we need to do while also attending to those around us. And this person on the internet can tell me if I completely did not understand them, as much as you can tell someone over little typed messages. Okay, so we're gonna use box number 2 of our paper now. So we're gonna take our positive motivation and try to think about an action that would support that. So if your positive motivation is to be more present for people, what would help you to be more present? What would support you so that you can be available to people and be more present? So maybe it's more sleep, or maybe it's taking breaks. So this is like a little brainstorm box. What could you do as an action to support getting towards your positive motivation? And there could be like 20 things, and we don't have to narrow it down yet. So this is kind of like your free time. Okay. So I'll give you just a minute or so to kind of bring your brainstorming to a conclusion for now. The person on the internet said that they appreciate my point about how it's good to communicate clearly and concisely with colleagues, and they were actually thinking more about communication within themselves. So their intention was to understand what they believe is right and wrong in a decision or a project. And so that's, the first step of communication is being clear on what you need so that you can communicate that both internally, be super clear, and then communicate that to others. So that's an awesome point that this person made. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do today, is to identify what's important to us, what we value, what we actually care about, and how we can bring that into our life and our work and our home life as well. So thank you for clarifying that. So how was it brainstorming what you might do to take care of yourself? Did you have a lot of ideas, couple ideas, not really sure? People on the internet can chime in. How did it go? Eileen?
Hi, Monica, good to see
Hi.
you. In my field, in my position as administrative assistant, I have to take a lunch break, which I'm grateful for. I
Yes.
see my two bosses, have their lunch in their office. and
Yep.
That's what they choose to do, but
Yep.
they leave at 3 o'clock or so.
Yeah.
I'm here 8 to 5.
Mhm.
I'm grateful for that hour away, even though today
Mhm.
my lunch is at 1. Finally, kind of at this point, so I apologize for being late. Not so much anymore. I used to go to 30th Street, but now I go to Produce Junction out my way. I buy myself flowers often.
Oh, I love that.
It's only $3 worth, maybe $17, $20 there.
Yeah.
But when I even brought them back to the office, people said, "Where the flowers come from?" Like, from me. And just doing something like that. But I also take an index card as my day's going through in the morning and prioritize what I need to move forward on.
Great.
And I let the emails go
Mhm.
and get back to them.
Mhm.
And because that does take time. And that's what I'm actually doing. And I do take my break in the morning. I don't so much take it in the afternoon, but
Mhm.
I appreciate that extra cup of coffee around 9:45.
That's great. So we had a lot of ideas from the audience. So buying yourself flowers, just sort of beautifying your space. I'm guessing that gives you a little uplift, brings some nature in. Do you always bring them to work? Or do some of them go home?
At home, I do it more often at home.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't carry them back and forth. I do keep them at home.
Okay, great. So you have flowers when you arrive
Sitting on
home.
my table.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you come home to something warm and caring and beautiful in your
I'm
home.
not waiting for somebody else.
Yeah, no, and not waiting for somebody else. That's awesome. Definitely taking care of yourself in that way. We talked about having like a note card at the beginning of the day, just prioritizing like what do I actually need to do today, so that you can kind of take care of those things and let the other things fall away a little bit. I once had a boss who said, if you finished all your work by the end of the day, you wouldn't have a job, right? Like there's always more work to come back to, so just knowing what you need to really do. Did I miss anything that's important to you for me to share? Was that a good summary? Okay, great. Did anyone else? So I've got late afternoon nap on the list. Someone else said not having email accessible on their phone, which is something I've done as well. Like, I do not need that. If I have to go to a computer, it's just that much extra work to have to do it, so it's not like I'm always connected. Scheduling an appointment with myself to paint. Scheduling an appointment with my husband and sons to spend 2 hours doing something outside the house. Great. So we have some beautiful strategies, and these are all very different, which is perfect because we're all completely different people with shared human needs but different strategies to get there. Okay. So we're gonna keep going. So we're going to do a little thing together. So this is something that we'll use right now just to kind of transition between slides. We're almost at the end, and I am proud of myself for not cramming too much because I want to share everything with you, but we only have an hour, so I've learned to be more realistic about what we can do. So what we're going to do right now is called the 3-breath reset. So we're going to start by just getting comfortable in our chairs. You can close your eyes or you can look down at the table, whatever is best for you. So in the first breath, and we're going to take a couple to do this, we're going to pay attention to any kind of thoughts or feelings or bodily sensations that we're having. So we're just going to take a moment to turn inwards and see what's going on. So you don't have to fix or change anything here. You can just see what's true for you right now. In the second breath, and we're going to take a couple, we're going to just see what's happening outside of ourselves. So you can pay attention to any sounds in the room, the sensation of the air conditioning on your skin, noticing how the room feels, seeing how it feels to have people near you. Everyone very sweetly sat at 2 tables together during this little talk. So just seeing what you can draw from your external environment to nourish you. And then the third breath, and we're going to take a couple, just allows us to refocus on whatever is right in front of us. So you can slowly return to the room, opening your eyes and just coming back to this presentation. So how did that feel? Great. So you can do that more quickly. So the 3 breaths could be 9 breaths or 24 or 3. But if you're feeling really inundated, you just take a breath to see how you're feeling. And then you take a breath to kind of see like what's going on around me. And then you take a breath to return to whatever you're doing intentionally. So we go in, we go out, we go back. Okay. Okay, so we have a couple more things I want to share from the people who've kindly typed into this chat box. So we have faculty member sharing that they have flexibility and autonomy. I love that for them. Those are 2 of my core values. But they have a hard time taking a break. So they use an app that forces them to take a break every 15 minutes. And they break every hour away from the computer screen and leaving their phone elsewhere in a lab so that they don't look at it throughout the day. So not having your phone, as I have my phone right now. I am using the clock right there so that's not always kind of distracting you. And if this person wants to type in like the name of that app for everyone, that would be great if they can share that. Okay, and people say they feel good and relaxed, so I'm happy about that. So what we're going to do in the last couple minutes together is to make a little plan. So becoming a friend for yourself, buying yourself flowers. Don't wait for someone else to buy you flowers. Go get them. You can have them for yourself. So we're going to take a look at our list in box 2 of possible self-care strategies and decide, like, is there 1 or 2 things I could maybe start trying? So we want to keep this super simple. This isn't like I'm going to start running and eating vegan food and sleeping 12 hours. This is like one little doable action that you think you can start trying. Or if it's something that you've done in the past and you've dropped, like, oh, what would it look like to come back to that? I used to do yoga 5 times a week. I did not try to restart that with 5 after it dropped to 1. I decided, like, oh, I'm going to try again for 2. You know, like, I'm not going to go from 1 to 5. Though I did do like 17 days of yoga every day, but that has dropped already. So that was not like a long-term realistic thing. So try to be real with yourself about what you can commit to. And while we're doing this, I just want to remind the people online to please email me so I can record your attendance. So if you've typed into the chat box, I just cannot keep up with that. It is overwhelming to me. So please email me at mef@drexel.edu, and I will definitely let you know. I will check you in for this workshop, and you'll get 15 wellness points, which is great. Does everyone have like one tiny action? Would anyone like to share just to reinforce their action, either online or in person? Does anyone want to share their action?
I need to hydrate more. I didn't drink all this today. And it might sound silly, but I definitely feel a difference when I'm hydrated as to when I'm not.
Oh, yeah.
It's every, like, my interactions, how
Yeah.
I feel about myself, my body, how it processes things. So although it might sound minor, to me it's really important to focus on this so much more.
Great.
And oftentimes it just sits on my desk,
Mhm.
you know, so I have to really be conscious,
Yeah.
you know, of that. And I know sometimes it's the lip,
Mhm.
you know, of it, like something small or bigger.
Yeah.
The pint glass.
Yep.
Tends to, a glass, pint glass. I'll
Great.
do more
Great.
focus with that, and I can track it. versus
Awesome.
like this.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, there's a lot going on there. Great. So we talked about hydration, which is actually important for me too. I'm a little dehydrated. I just started losing the thread of Eileen's beautiful list of things. I was getting woozy. So we talked about, like, a strategy would be having a pint glass, something nice to drink out of, rather than this giant bottle that feels like portable and not as cozy. So hydration, that's awesome, and it's not minor. It's real for you, and we all have different things that are important to us. So good. And I'm going to just share one from the group. So someone said they're going to meditate using the Calm app for 15 minutes every day. That's awesome. I find it's helpful if you set a time that's kind of somewhat non-negotiable to do that, if you calendar that. All right, so we're almost at time, and I want to respect your time. So we're just going to wrap up. So basically, we have to know that self-care is a process. So it's not like we get it all at once. It's like eating. You have to continue doing it to maintain your well-being. And it's a series of decisions, right? Like, the decision to get here 15 minutes early to read involves a lot of other decisions: setting your alarm, eating, showering more quickly, leaving the house on time. It involves, like, setting yourself up to succeed. So remembering that busyness is going to happen, we can only control how we react to it. And finding supportive ways to soothe yourself. You know, candy can be fun, but it's not going to actually make you feel better in the long run. So finding ways that actually nourish you to support yourself so that you can feel a little less distressed and more at ease. Breathing practices, another one I like to do that I think makes hopefully my interactions nicer, is when the phone rings, I pause and I say breathing in, I hear the phone ring, breathing out, I pick up the phone. So rather than like you're working and you're like, hello, this is Monica, you're like, oh, I've taken a moment and I can like pick up the phone and be receptive to this other person. And then also keeping a journal or a list of ways that you can care for yourself so that you can have like some accountability and you have like a bucket list. So if you're really overwhelmed, you're like, wait, let me look at my journal and remember how I do this. Okay. So that is what I have for you. So if anyone has questions or comments, I can be on the internet. The name of the little app thingy that makes you take a break is called Time Out, and it's an Apple app. Okay. So if anyone has anything, I'm here. I'm happy to have been with you, and thank you for coming. Thank you.
Do you share the PowerPoint with us?
I can share the PowerPoint. So if you email me, I will do that, if that's okay, and I will gladly share the PowerPoint. It has bonus slides from like all the other times I've done this that are at the end. Yeah, of course. I'm happy to share the PowerPoint. All right, thank you.
Should we leave these pens?
Oh, you can take it if you want it.